Thank you, Ed. So before going to my presentation, I have some thank yous to do. Thanking the WFH for interesting on behalf of the Psychosocial Committee, interesting us with this work of doing the monograph. Also would like to thank my co-authors, Michelle and Mariana, on this. It was quite a journey working on this monograph. So coming to consideration in less developed countries, this is the disclosure. I would be discussing more on importance of family history, family and community outreach, and some of the things Michelle has already covered. Identifying resources to maximize genetic counseling and factors that are affecting genetic counseling. So you have already heard from Jennifer and Michelle about how the services are in the developed world, which is, we have done a little survey before doing this monograph, and in the less developed countries we didn't found anywhere near to this. However, whatever the facilities and the services are, the importance of genetic counseling cannot be undermined, and it has to take the account of the patient's experience and perceptions, their desires, as well as their influence of social, cultural, and religious contexts. So if the ideal resources doesn't exist, the importance of genetic counseling is to improve knowledge, reduce psychological distress, and improve informed decision-making for the patients or the families. The identifying resources, and as we have already talked about, that what could be the resources at the ANMO or the HTCs, and it is not always the genetic professions, but for the other professions of psychosocial workers, nurses, who can provide the genetic counseling. So again, during the survey, we found that in South Africa, the genetic counselors were available, but they were available in different centers and in the academic centers. So we have to see how we could link them to the NMO or the HTCs in different countries. Non-genetic health professionals working with the HTC or the NMOs benefit from participating in the conferences or training workshops, and this is one session like this where we are doing the collaboration to learn and share our experiences. Family and community outreach, it helps identify other family members who could benefit from knowing their genetic status, helps them make informed decisions regarding their own healthcare and reproductive choices, helps patients communicate the genetic status or issues related to testing, target individuals with hemophilia or previously undiagnosed hemophilia carriers who may benefit people who need help communicating. Educational or primary outreach programs could have greatest influence on females of reproductive age or who are potential carriers. Hemophilia societies and NMOs are again a great resource to disseminate information on genetic counseling, access to educational and communication resources that explain the essential of counseling and the process of individuals, couples, and families. Peer group support for women who are carriers may also provide information and education about the hemophilia and the genetic counseling. So what are the factors that affect taking the genetic counseling? And here are some. Is the severity of hemophilia. The severity of hemophilia and an individual's perception of the severity influences a lot on information discussion during the genetic counseling process. The need for education correlates with increasing severity of hemophilia and its increasing impact on the quality of life and their families. Perception of genetic counseling. Unfamiliarity with the genetic counseling process sometimes create some degree of unfamiliarity for most people. It may create unwanted anxiety, leaving some patients less receptive to the counseling or hearing to the information discussed. Patients and healthcare professionals may incorrectly perceive genetic counselors as being directive when presenting reproductive choices to patients. Other misperceptions include equating genetic counseling with psychotherapy or expecting that genetic counseling consists solely of performing genetic testing. Healthcare consideration. In less developed countries, there are different other healthcare problems that exist in the country, and more the resources are devoted to those, for example, the tuberculosis, malaria, etc. And therefore, hemophilia being a small proportion, the importance on genetic counseling remains less recognized. Marriage and consanguinity, this is an important factor. Marriages are arranged in some culture, often with the head of the family deciding the marriages of his daughters. There may be concern about disclosing whether a daughter is a carrier or potential carrier of hemophilia, for fear that no suitable alliance will be forthcoming, or that having a child with a disability could lead her to be rejected by her in-laws. The importance of genetic counseling has been recognized in developing countries where consanguineous marriages is an integral part of social and cultural life. Consanguinity in the family with a history of genetic disease, such as hemophilia, can be an important effect. Sexual taboos, reproductive choices, attitudes towards sexual orientation, societal traditions, and the age at which marriage is considered acceptable vary widely from culture to culture, and influence when it is appropriate to educate about inheritance. Some cultures speak more openly about risk to pregnancies, and some may more easily accept discussion of these topics. Religious and cultural beliefs. Different religions, societal, and cultural factors influence decisions regarding marriage, childbearing, treatment options, and interventions related to hemophilia. These can have significant implications on this counseling session. Society and culture in developing countries do not allow a woman to make decisions, even those related to her own body. Decisions about abortion or childbearing are made by the family or the husband. Gender differences is another factor, and there are examples in certain cultures. The male head of the house is responsible for making important decisions. This can leave a female carrier of hemophilia vulnerable and at risk for stigmatization and isolation based on the inheritance of hemophilia. Disclosure, this is again a very, very important factor, and so the hemophilia community has been stigmatized by co-infection with HIV, hepatitis, and other comorbidities. Some individuals fear that simply discussing specific health implications will lead to unwanted outcomes, and therefore prefer to avoid these discussions entirely. Acquiring and maintaining health insurance continues to be a primary focus in HTC and NMO settings. Many people fear that family history and genetic testing information, particularly for women who are carriers, may lead to genetic discrimination or difficulty obtaining health and life insurance. So therefore, to conclude, genetic counseling is a very important component, and it has to be recognized. It is a process that not only empowers patients with proper education, but also provides non-directive counseling. It impacts on the lives of the PWH and women and provides them with the opportunity to make informed reproductive choices. Thank you.